With us now, Republican Congressman from Alabama, Representative Gary Palmer. He'll also be there tonight. Congressman, thank you for your time. Let's start with the concern about inflation and these new tariffs. I know that many of your constituents are worried about grocery prices. We've seen eggs go up. How much will chicken cost? What if I'm going to go buy a new car? How do you expect the president to address those concerns tonight?
I think he's going to start off by talking about his energy policy. As I've pointed out many times, energy is the most inflationary component of the entire economy. And if we unleash our energy potential, you're going to see prices start coming down because everything that you come in contact with, everything you use, has an energy cost.
Do you agree with the president that there may be some short-term pain, however, for Americans before they see a long-term change?
Well, the short-term pain was inflicted by the Biden administration, and you don't turn this around overnight. So I think one of the things that you'll see when we really unleash the energy policy or release the energy policy, you'll start seeing it impact energy futures. But it's going to take a while to bring this down. You look at what the Democratic Congress did the first 2 years of the Biden administration. They added almost $10 trillion in new spending. And it's going to take a while, but we're going to get there.
I want to get your thoughts on some of the cuts we've seen in government spending and some of the recent firings led by DOJ and Elon Musk. The criticism has been, Congressman, that the pace has been frenetic and has largely sidestepped Congress. Is that a fair criticism, and how will the president address that in tone tonight?
Well, I think what people ought to be looking at is how antiquated our federal data systems are. It's amazing that Elon Musk has brought in these computer experts with 21st century technology and done better oversight of federal government and federal spending than we've done in the last 40 years. So I think that's one of the things that people ought to be focusing on is, do we really need a government the size that we have when we're sending out $240 billion per year in improper payments? And that's just a start. And then you bring in these folks with a laptop and writing these algorithms, and they're finding massive amounts of waste and fraud. I think that's the real story here that nobody's really talking about.
Most would agree, Congressman, that there is a lot of government waste, and they support going through these different administrations and different organizations and trimming the fat, so to speak. It's the how it's being done. I've interviewed a number of people who have been fired, who have worked very hard, who think their jobs are very important, and it was the way that they were let go. Are you supportive of how it's happened, and do you think that there's a better, more compassionate way to assess the legitimacy of some of these jobs?
Well, I made recommendations early on that we offer people an early retirement package, but they needed to know that there are going to be big changes coming to government. So, I think practically every federal employee had the opportunity to take that buyout. So I felt badly for those who didn't do it. They would have gotten 8 months' pay, had plenty of time to find another job, and I think we're going to have a thriving job market going forward. So, you need to ask Elon Musk or someone in the administration about the methodology that they're using. But I think there were opportunities for people to take advantage of a very generous buyout program.
I'd like to ask you about...
By the way, this
yes?
was done in the 90s by American corporations, so this is not something new.
Right. Many businesses do it. We haven't seen it quite to this extent for government agencies at the federal level. The president last night paused military aid to Ukraine after that Oval Office exchange with President Zelensky. Do you support pausing aid for Ukraine at this point, 3 years into Russia's invasion?
Well, I really hope that they're able to come back to the table, and I'm hoping that the president's actions is going to motivate Zelensky to come back and work with us. I think the deal is still on the table and could be signed. I think that's the way to do it. I think the American public has made it very clear that they don't want to be funding somebody else's war. We're not going to be spending more money or giving away weapons. But if we can have a deal where they're buying the weapons from us and using their critical minerals and rare earth elements as collateral, that's a sensible approach to things. I think what's happened after the dust-up in the Oval Office is that Europe has become more aware of the American position, and I think you're going to see them step up to the table like never before.
The president's crackdown on immigration has been apparent in the last several weeks. We've seen numbers at the border go down. This week, mayors from several big sanctuary cities across the country will be in Washington, D.C. You will be in a position to ask them questions about their policies. There has been criticism they've stood in the way of some of the federal raids. What will you be asking those mayors of Chicago and New York and Denver and Boston about their policies and their plan moving forward?
Well, I'd like to know if they're willing to face charges for obstruction of justice, because they all have an obligation to uphold federal law. And that's not what they did. They decided that they didn't like the laws written by the Congress, passed and signed into law by the president, past presidents. And so they just made this unilateral decision that they wouldn't do it. And not only they would not comply, they wouldn't assist in arresting these criminal elements who are here illegally. What Tom Homan and his team are doing right now, they're going after the cartel members, the gangbangers, the ones who have committed violence, some of whom are in jail now. And these mayors were refusing to allow those people to be taken out of our jails and deported.
And do you support Congressman withholding federal funding if these mayors do not comply?
I think we ought to go a step farther and hold these mayors individually accountable for failing to uphold the law. That's their job as elected officials.
Congressman Gary Palmer, we thank you for stopping by. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.